Welcome to Sit Down News. This episode is going to be about an incident that took place on September 18th, 1991 at the Kimberly Hotel. At that time, I was not around. I was incarcerated. The only people that I don't know and never met in this story are two. One is Al Diaco. Al Diaco, at that time of the story, was the acting boss of the Lucchese family. Um, This here is Mikey DeSantis. Mikey DeSantis is the present day acting boss of the family. But when this incident took place in 91, he was a friend with the family, which means he was an inducted member of the family. The boss and underboss of the family, the boss was Vic Amuso. Vic Amuso was incarcerated. He had gotten arrested, and Anthony Gaspipe Casso was on the lam, as we say, but he was running and trying to evade law enforcement. Prior to the meeting that we're going to speak about, there was an earlier meeting, which was a sit down with the Bonanno family, and there was a dispute, and Al Diaco and Anthony Boat, I believe he was a Caporegino, a captain in the family at the time. I had met Anthony Boat. We'll talk about that in a minute. And there was another friend at the meeting with the Bonannos, which his name was Frankie Pearl. Frankie Pearl happens to be an uncle to Johnny Sideburns, which you always hear us talk about. And they had this meeting first, and they went into the Kimberly Hotel. And then when they were done with that meeting, they were going to have a Lucchese panel, which would be the administration, and they were going to go over family business and discuss things that they needed to. They were meeting Frankie Lastarino at that time, who was a member of the panel, and also attending the meeting was losing my train of thought, was Sally Avellino, and I've met Sally Avellino plenty of times. So they're at this meeting now, and Frankie Lastarino comes in, Sally Avellino is there, Al Diaco, and they're, like I said, they're going over the family business. And it starts to get late, and Al wants to get out of there, out of the hotel, and he wants to leave. And this is all information that came. Al had written a book. I believe he had passed away since, but when he was alive, he wrote a book. And if you get the book and you go to the Kimberly Hotel chapter, he gives a more in-depth version, and it's his story. So what takes place is that when Al Diaco, and don't forget, he's the acting boss at the time. If he wants to leave, he could leave. And at one point, he gets up and he says, "All right, I'm done. I want to go." And Frankie Lastarino turns around and says to me, "Al, don't go nowhere. Big Mike is downstairs, and he's going to come up. He's got something that he wants to discuss with you." And he's referring to Mikey DeSantis. Sometimes he's referred to as Big Mike. And according to what Al's saying, is that they are acting very strange, and he could feel something's not right. And I know that feeling myself. When you're around guys and you know the way they act, and then all of a sudden there's a change in the vibe, something's wrong. And in that life, it's a lot more intense. So Mikey DeSantis finally comes up, and Al, he don't like it because Mikey was not part of this original meeting, and he's trying to make some kind of sense as to what Mikey is actually doing there. And this is taking place in the middle of the summer months. And when Mikey, according to Al, when Mikey walks into the hotel room, he's dressed like winter. He's got a heavy sweatshirt on, jeans, and work boots, and says hello. He says hello to Al, and what Al notices is that because the sweatshirt is so bulky, he's realizing that Mikey has a bulletproof vest underneath the sweatshirt, which is reason for alarm, obviously. But it gets worse because Mikey at one point is carrying a plastic bag, according to Al, and he puts the bag down and goes to bend over, and Mikey sees he's got a pistol stuck, tucked into the back of his pants. And in this kind of environment, in this meeting, there's no reason that he shouldn't be bringing a pistol unless he's actually going to wind up using it. And Al knows this. He's been in a life, and now he's doubly on edge. He's on high alert, as we say. And after some small talk, Mikey DeSantis at one point gets up and goes to the bathroom. So, according to Al from the book, what's going on in his mind is that he's expecting Mikey to come out pistol in hand and blasting away. And he's kind of trying to come up with a plan in his head to rush Mikey and try and wrestle the gun and save his life, get out of there. He wants to get out of there, obviously, at this point. But Mikey DeSantis comes out of the bathroom, no pistol in hand. And Al realizes that when he walks over, he sees that Mikey no longer has the pistol behind his back. And now he figures out that Mikey must have went and left the pistol in the bathroom. Maybe somebody else is going to use the bathroom. They're going to come out. So he's got all these thoughts going, and I would be thinking the same thing. And all these scenarios are probably running through his mind, and they make some small talk about Mikey was going to be talking to him about some cardboard. And Al's trying to look for an exit because he wants out of there. And the opportunity comes, and he gets up and says, "Hey, I got someone waiting for me downstairs. I got to go." And he explains that they were like giving each other, eye contact, and, something was going on in his mind that they were looking to hit him. And he gets out of the hotel room and he goes over to the elevator, and he finally gets on the elevator, and he says in his book that he lets out a sigh of relief, and he says to himself, they were going to kill me in there. Well, now I could tell you that they definitely were going to kill him in there. I have heard stories within the family that he was very lucky to have made it out alive out of that hotel room. I don't know why they didn't do it. It could be that they were in the hotel room, and there's people in the hotel, and it just was a hard thing to pull off. I really don't know the answer to why they didn't actually do it. I do know he was very lucky to get out of there. And as I said, with the exception of Al Diaco and Frankie Pearl, who I've never met, I have met and dealt with Mikey DeSantis, and he's definitely a capable guy. I have met Anthony Boat, and Anthony Boat was what we call on the shelf. And that means that your membership is taken away and you're no longer active in the family. You're not recognized in the family by other families. And what had happened is that when, like what was happening there, because you had Vic and Vic in prison, which was the boss, and Gas Pipe was on the lam, there was a void in the administration in top positions. And we had that ourselves. And to fill that void, we had Mikey DeSantis became the acting boss, just like Al was back then. And one of the first things that he did, and it was, everybody respected it, was that he revisited people that were also on the shelf at that time, and one in which was Anthony Boat. And he made a decision to take Anthony off the shelf, and that meant to bring him back into the family where he is recognized once again. And when that took place, I had went with Mikey and a bunch of guys, and we, in case people don't know, we had a table in Rails. We went to Rails, and I forget who it was, but someone brought Anthony Boat. He came by himself, and I was introduced to him formally at that time. So that's when they took him off of the shelf. And the other person was Frankie Lastarino. Frankie Lastarino was also put on the shelf. When I met Frankie Lastarino, I was about maybe a week or two away from being inducted into the family. I had taken a walk with him in a park in Howard Beach called Charles Park, and we walked around the park, and he knew what my position was going to be. And one of the things we talked about, many of things, which we could get into at another time, was that Frankie had told me that he said, John, you could always find the bad in people. He says, look for the good in people. And I just felt that that was real, that was wise advice. And I try to always implement that in my life today. And it was just good advice. And I would give it to other people, because it is easy to always find the bad in people. But if you look hard enough, you could find the good in anyone. We all have good in us, and a lot of people have bad in us. If you really want a better depiction of what took place, you could buy Al Diaco's book, and the chapter called Kimberly Hotel he explains it. Obviously, it's his story. He could explain it in more detail, and there is more detail. I just didn't want to read it verbatim, word for word. So I hope you enjoyed the story. If you haven't subscribe down below. I'm going to relax a little bit, and take care till the next time.